So this tractor is probably not the best example of a clutch linkage pin that's really frozen, but once in a while you get some that are really rusted in. I've even had to get extreme and use a torch at times, although you try to avoid doing that. The hardest thing is there's a cotter key that goes in the back side, and it's always in the most inconvenient place. So if you've got a good pair of needle nose pliers or bent needle nose pliers, it's probably the best way to get at some of these pins. Just not fun pins to try to get out at times. Even taking a pair of pliers and turning on the head of the pin while prying up certainly helps if you get lucky. So now that you've got the linkage disconnected from the clutch fork to the clutch operating lever, we see this nice piece of cast. The little ear on the first reduction cover that in this case hasn't been broken and welded. But if you went about this in the wrong way, we may have to do a short segment with our certified in-house welder, JJ, on how to repair and weld cast iron. But in this case, we're not gonna have that problem because we're gonna try to do it correctly. So there's several tools out there aftermarket to remove this clutch pivot pin. In this case, we're actually following a service bulletin that John Deere offered by using in this case, 1/2-inch bolt with a fairly decent amount of threads on it and a nut inside, and putting them inside of the clutch lever, threading them in, and using it as a pusher bolt. Being that we're working on a diesel, we don't have adequate clearance in this area with the decompression lever, whereas a gas tractor or LP or all fuel would not have that issue. Alright, so after realizing that the 1/2-inch bolt that I chose did not have long enough threads, so probably either, if you can't find a bolt with longer threads, a piece of all thread with a double nut tightened up on the end so you can use it like a regular bolt may suffice. But we're going to see if this little trick works, since the masterful engineers at Deere & Company, oh, I see what happens. Yeah, obviously it's important to make sure we put a wrench on the nut inside. It's probably helpful when we're using the jacking bolt to remove the lever to have a helper hold the top of the clutch lever, or the handle up top, while this is going on, and make sure the whole time while we're going that we keep the nut on the inside loose. Of course, in cases of like your non-live PTO tractors, such as an A or a B, don't have all the PTO foot clutch assembly to be here in the way. After nearly 10 minutes, we are perhaps seeing the light at the end of the proverbial tunnel. Removing the clutch pivot bolt. Folks, these are a real bear. It's not very far-fetched to break the cast iron ear off the reduction cover. Thus, my advice here is stay away from the torch. Torches are bad in cases like this. And pry bars are not so good. So if you're not able to get your clutch pin loose with this method, I would suggest seeking out some vendors out on the Wild Blue internet for some better made clutch pivot pin pulleys that are out there. Alright, so now it's time to try and get some things apart so we can remove the clutch pulley. And in the case of the 70, 720, and 730, we actually have to remove what they call the clutch dust seal, which is held in place by these 3/8 bolts that go all the way around the clutch pulley. Once you remove that, we'll show a short clip of what we find behind there in just a moment. Alright, so we're removing the clutch pulley dust seal. That's what it's called in the parts catalog as well as the service catalog. There are a couple dowel pins on both the front and back side to note in the 70, 720, and 730 series tractors. Just so you don't get in a hurry and pry unevenly. This is another job where it's best if you've got several helpers. And also to make sure you don't miss any bolts. And when I say that, I speak from experience. Alright, as we pull this out so far, we can pull it all the way out, and then we see the back side of our pulley. So here we are removing the toggles and the toggle pins and the dogs on the back side of the clutch pulley, and it's not the easiest thing to do because to remove the cotter key that's nice and bent around just like it should be, you have to hold the head of the pivot pin really well. Not the easiest thing to do. So JJ here has the dog and the toggle, which ironically this part looks like a dog bone, but it's actually called the toggle, and the part that doesn't look like the dog bone is called the dog. So for what that's worth, and we're going to probably be replacing the dogs. The biggest thing with the dogs and the toggles, especially on the toggles, is to notice that the ends of the toggles right here, I'm having a hard time focusing, but if they're worn flat, completely worn flat and misshapen, it's certainly something to bear in mind that they may need to be replaced. If you've got problems with your clutch not wanting to snap and engage and stay engaged, this is certainly one area for you to take a good close look at.